Camping in the wild has always had a strange allure. The crackle of a fire, the cold air, and the promise of isolation. But what many never realize is that the forest changes after midnight. It listens, it moves, and sometimes it watches back. These 15 true stories are not just about fear. They're about survival, instinct, and the unknown that lurks when the lantern's glow fades. The first story came from a man named Aaron, who decided to spend a solo weekend deep in the Montana wilderness. He pitched his tent near a quiet river surrounded by endless pine. On the first night, everything was peaceful. The sound of water, the wind brushing through branches. But around 2 a.m., he woke up to faint, deliberate footsteps circling his tent. He called out, thinking it might be a fellow camper. No response. Just soft crunching in the dirt, stopping right at his tent door. When he gathered the courage to unzip the flap, there was nothing. No prints, no sound, just a dead silence so thick it made his skin crawl. The next morning, he packed up early and hiked out. Before leaving, he turned back and saw large, barefoot prints leading into the trees. He swears they were human. The second story came from a couple who camped near Yosemite. They said around 3 a.m. they heard a man singing, softly like a lullaby. The song came closer, then circled their camp before fading into the woods. When they checked the next morning, they found small animal bones strung together on a tree branch above their tent. In another chilling case, a park ranger from Colorado said he received multiple reports of tents being slashed open while people slept, no valuables taken, no signs of animals, just perfect surgical cuts. The ranger himself later caught a glimpse of a man standing just beyond the firelight. One night, tall, motionless, watching. When the ranger called out, the man turned and vanished silently into the forest. Another camper told of a strange fog that rolled in thick and sudden while he was hiking back to camp. The trail disappeared and his GPS stopped working. For hours, he heard whispers around him, like multiple voices calling his name from different directions. When the fog lifted, he was standing in a completely different part of the forest, miles from his sight. He found his way back just before dawn, only to discover deep scratch marks on his tent, long, parallel claw marks that looked too symmetrical to be animal-made. A group of friends camping in Oregon set up near a remote lake. They were filming, themselves cooking and laughing by the fire when one of them noticed eyes, glowing across the water, not animal eyes, but round, reflective, and higher than any creature could stand. They zoomed in with the camera, and for a split second, they caught a pale face looking directly back. The footage was lost when their SD card corrupted the next morning. But they all remember that night, how every sound, every rustle made them freeze in fear. One of the most unsettling accounts came from a hunter who spent a night in a tree stand deep in the Appalachian woods. Around midnight, he heard what sounded like a woman crying for help. It echoed far but clear enough to chill him to the core. He shouted back, asking if she needed assistance. But the cry repeated, identical every time, like a recording. When he climbed down at dawn, he found nothing but his own tracks in the mud. Local police later told him they'd had multiple reports of the same crying woman sound for years. No one ever found the source. Story after story paints the same haunting picture. The woods are alive, unpredictable, and sometimes something ancient and unexplainable hides within them. A couple camping near Lake Tahoe woke up to find hundreds of tiny handprints pressed against the outside of their tent. Another man backpacking in Canada found his camp rearranged while he slept. Food packed neatly, his boots turned backward, and stones stacked beside his tent in perfect pyramids. He said it felt like someone had been studying him while he slept. For those who love camping, these stories serve as a quiet reminder. Respect the wilderness. It's not just the animals you should fear. It's what you can't see, what you can't hear, and what knows you're there before you ever notice it. If Chapter 1 showed the fear of being watched, Chapter 2 dives into the horror of being found. These true stories were shared by people who barely escaped their camping trips alive. Stories of strange sounds, unseen stalkers, and forces that defy logic. Our first tale begins with two brothers who camped near an abandoned fire lookout tower in Idaho. They heard something metallic clanging above them at night. When they looked up, The tower light was flickering, though the place had no power. They climbed up to investigate, only to find carvings on the walls, words written over and over in what looked like charcoal. "Don't stay past 3. As they climbed down, they saw movement at the tree line, dozens of silhouettes standing perfectly still. They ran to their truck, and as they sped away, they saw the tower light switch off behind them. Another camper recounted how he and his friend got lost in the Smoky Mountains after their compass began spinning uncontrollably. As night fell, they stumbled upon an old tent, shredded and weathered, but still standing. Inside were children's drawings depicting stick figures with hollow eyes. That night they heard laughing, faint at first, then louder, circling their camp. When they shined their flashlight, there were no children, just footprints, small and barefoot, leading into the darkness. A terrifying event unfolded for a group of college students camping in Arizona. They heard scratching on their tents, followed by deep breathing just outside. When one of them peeked out, a tall figure crawled out of the brush, unnaturally long-limbed, moving on all fours. They ran for their lives, leaving everything behind. When they returned with rangers the next morning, their campsite was untouched, except for a single word carved into a tree: "Stay." In another story, a solo camper in Alaska woke to the sound of humming. He described it as mechanical, like a distant generator, but he was miles from civilization. When he stepped outside, he saw a blue light hovering silently between the trees. It blinked twice and shot straight up into the sky. The next day, his radio stopped working, and his compass pointed north no matter where he turned. He left immediately, but the nightmares of that blue light followed him for years. Perhaps the most disturbing account came from a father and daughter camping trip in Washington. The father said his daughter woke him at 2 a.m., whispering that someone was calling her name from outside the tent, but it was his voice. When he called out, he heard his own voice answer back, perfectly mimicking him coming from the woods. He grabbed his daughter and ran for their car. As they drove away, the voice shouted his name one last time, echoing through the forest in his exact tone. Many of these stories remain unexplained. The people who shared them were ordinary campers, hikers, travelers, nature lovers, not the type to make things up. But one thing they all said in common: the forest feels different after midnight. The air gets heavier, sounds get closer, and every shadow seems to breathe. One ranger from Wyoming put it best: "You don't really camp alone. Something's always awake with you." These are not stories meant to scare you away from nature, but to remind you that even in the most peaceful silence, the woods are alive, aware, and ancient. So as the campfire burns low and the night creeps in, remember these 15 stories. When you hear that branch snap or that whisper you can't explain, maybe you'll think twice before assuming it's the wind. If you made it this far, you're the kind of listener who loves the thrill of fear, the kind that lingers even after the story ends. So, before you go, subscribe to this channel for more true horror compilations like this one. Turn on notifications so you never miss a night of chills. Let's keep this campfire burning, because tomorrow night, we have even darker stories to tell.